Mr. Narasimhan, how would you summarize Novartis' business performance in 2025?
2025, we met our full year guidance, and we're really pleased with the strong performance of the business. 8% sales growth, 14% profit growth. It really continues now what's been more than 3 years of really strong performance. I think also we had a lot of important pipeline readouts, which I think will drive our growth to 5 to 6% sales growth we expect through 2030.
In 2025, you recorded significant sales and profit growth. How sustainable is this growth in an environment where many blockbuster patents are expiring?
We're going to go through our largest set of patent expiries in the company's history, so it's going to be about $4 billion of impact, but that's mostly in the first half of 2026. We expect by the second half of the year to return back to very strong growth, and then through the rest of the decade, continued growth, which is why we could guide to 5 to 6% growth through 2030. So this is a short-term challenge. We're going to get through it over 6 months, and then we'll be back to strong performance.
What does the future hold for Novartis in the US market? Are you now protected from US President Trump's erratic tariff and pricing policies?
We are protected from the tariffs insofar as we have already made the investments to build up facilities that allow us to produce in the U.S. for the U.S. And then also with the MFN agreement we signed, that allows us to be exempt from tariffs going forward, at least for the next 3 years. So taken together, we don't expect any exposure from tariffs. We will have to manage now the new MFN agreement, particularly as it relates to pricing of our medicines in Europe, Canada, and Japan. In these markets now, we're going to have to find ways to better value innovation given the way the MFN agreements work.
In an open letter, you called for higher drug prices in the EU. What specific changes would you like to see, and how do you respond to criticism that higher prices place a burden on patients?
You know, the underlying issue we're trying to resolve is that the innovation in our sector is primarily funded by the United States. And the difference now between Europe and US prices has gotten to be quite large. So we want to bring that back in alignment. And there's a few things we're going to need to do. One, we'll have to change policies as to how drugs are valued. Often in Europe, we're compared to the oldest comparator drug possible, rather than what we believe would be a more fair comparison, which is versus the standard of care. So first is that comparison. Second, we need budgets to increase. Right now in Europe, actual innovative medicines budgets are half they are in the United States on a GDP adjusted basis. So we need that to change. And then third, we need Europe to be more pro-innovation, which would mean don't claw back growth when it's innovation related. Also support innovation, clinical trials, et cetera. I think if we got all three of those things to happen, over 3 to 5 years, we could begin to get this fixed. Now, I would say as well, our goal is still to bring our medicines to the patients who need them. We don't want patients to suffer because of this.
Would you go so far as to keep drugs off the Swiss market if the price was unsatisfactory?
We don't want to end up in that situation where we have to prevent drugs from coming on the market, but I could see a situation where we'll have to delay or find alternative ways to launch the medicines. We're working with the Swiss government to think through, are there new innovative ways to create funding mechanisms for the most innovative drugs so patients in Switzerland can get the medicines they need, and we can still be able to manage the MFN agreements we have with the United States. So those discussions are ongoing.
What would be your message to policymakers in Europe and Switzerland who have to balance price pressure and healthcare budgets?
Look, I think this is all about priorities, and the pharmaceutical industry in Europe is one of the strongest sectors in the whole of Europe. When you look at manufacturing, you look at employment, you look at the history, this is where the industry was actually started. So for so many reasons, this should be an industry that is really strongly supported. We know that many other industries get very large subsidies in Europe. Many other industries get a variety of different supports. So to take some of that money to support new innovative launches, I think would be really a sensible trade-off for policymakers to make.